Well, is the fight against corruption still on? How bad does it get when the one who's meant to keep watch seems to be the one who's pilfering? Do we have an unwashed hand dipped in the soup pot? Now, come to think of it, it's a story of a very old and sick man. He was so ill that the family were up and about looking for money to get the surgeons to operate on him. Now, sadly, he died. As they tried to move his remains, right under his bed was a box filled with millions of naira. Now, let's leave it there. We'll wait more information from the office of the First Lady. Did you hear she had her ADC arrested? What was the crime? Again, 2.5 billion naira fraud? What? Well, that bit of news is inconclusive to me. Lagos politics hots up just as the APC keeps moving its date for the primaries. Do you understand what direct free kick means? I beg your pardon. Direct primaries. What's the vibe you get across your neighborhood? Stove on, pot on fire, it's cooking time. It's Political Stew. I'm Sulaiman Aled. Welcome. Adams Oshiomhole, the national chairman of the APC, has said the party will uphold core values and find the right qualities in its candidates. Mr. Oshiomhole said the party has taken critical lessons from the mistake of the past, where people he tagged bread and butter politicians were given tickets. Now, sounds cool, just like bread and butter. Well, we shall ensure that we carry every part of this country along in our policies. Now, that's Aminu Tambuwal, the governor of Sokoto State, speaking earlier today in Niger State. And what motivated him to join the race? These are some of the things he said. The motivation is about good governance. The motivation is about unity and development of this country. The motivation is about my quest to mobilize best hands in order to get Nigeria right. You can get to watch us live online on the go at tvcnews.tv/live streaming. We're live on YouTube, TVC News Nigeria Live, and youtube.com/political stew. Watch us live on Facebook and visit our website, politicalstewng.com. And the big one, Political Stew now has a mobile app for updates on the program and news on politics and national development. You find it on the Google Play Store and download. Politics and politicians and words and actions and every other thing leads towards 2019. And the road to 2019, how smooth and rocky will that be for the contenders, or some who would ordinarily be termed as the pretenders by some analysts? But again, we're likely to look at the smooth ride or the rocky ride towards 2019. Joining me now is Austyn Ogannah. He's the President, Online Publishers Association of Nigeria, and also the publisher of The Whale. Good to have you join us, Austyn.
Thank you very much.
Glad to have you back in the country. Well, let's look at issues, because we have a potpourri of issues now leading up to 2019. First, let's talk about what is happening in the PDP. And first, the PDP was a little bit dormant and silent, but now we're getting to see the PDP, raving and, gathering momentum. Let's take it from there and see the actions that led to the PDP getting this gusto all of a sudden.
Thanks for having me on your show again. I'll just start the conversation by agreeing with you. I think the PDP seems to have the momentum coming out of what happened in Austyn on Saturday, in a very close election, an election that we didn't even give the delegate candidate a chance. After the PDP lost the general election in 2015, the party had over the years tried to build itself back, and I was one of those that never really give them a chance until the big blow, until what happened in Austyn. But give that as it may, I think the party still has a lot of work to do. It's still not there yet. I think they still have a lot of challenge, and I think it also gives the APC an opportunity to put its house together, because if you ask me, I'll say the party did not manage its victory in 2015 well. The party has allowed itself become its own enemy, its own opposition, especially with the defections in the National Assembly and all the chaos that the party has had to deal with. So in the long run, we expect to see a very interesting election year. We're all excited about it. There'll be upsets, of course.
I'd like to pick up from where you said the ruling party became its own opposition. Let's look at what has happened in the National Assembly and how the leadership went, and it was a shared form of leadership style they had initially. Getting to see, for instance, in the Senate, you had the APC then as the Senate President, and the PDP as the Deputy Senate President. And when you say the party was unable to manage its victory, what thing, did you think they did wrongly to have caused this defection we saw in the National Assembly, specifically in the Senate?
I'll call a spade a spade. After President Buhari won the general elections, and it became clear that the All Progressives Congress would be the dominant party in the National Assembly, I think it was time to show leadership, which he didn't show at that time. He said he was open and willing to work with whoever emerges as Senate President, as major leaders in the National Assembly. But apparently, the party itself had other plans. They did whatever they did. They did their own zoning. They had their own internal zoning arrangement. But apparently, I'll say because of lack of leadership, especially with with the president's body language, because usually if you don't set the tone, you open up, the foray for other leaders.
So in other words, he missed a chance.
He missed a chance to control the process, because if he had said, if you had had a conversation with all those that were interested in occupying the office, politics is all about give and take negotiations. And let's assume, just for the heck of this conversation, that maybe Saraki and Undume or one other person had indicated interest, and they had talked about it and had that micro conversation where the whole process is managed. I think we wouldn't have had the chaos that we had at the National Assembly, because immediately Saraki and co did what they did to emerge. You saw that was where the party's problems actually started, and the party still has not recovered Because there are people in APC today that are still very unhappy. People like Shehu Sani are unhappy. People like Magnus Abe are unhappy with the way the party has conducted or is going to conduct its primaries. That, of course, technically shuts them out. Because I don't know why the party is not doing direct primaries across board. If you do direct primaries across board, you save yourself a lot of problems. You allow the party members choose their leaders. But when you go and opt for indirect primaries, what you do is you are giving a clique of people the powers to choose who represents them in a major election. So the APC itself needs to do a lot of work, and until they fix the problems that they have, and I don't think Oshomole, its national chairman, is going about dealing with the issues the way he ought to deal with it. I think he's actually compounding problems instead of trying to fix it with his approach to the problem.
We'll come back to the APC because I think you hit it when you said, well, they haven't been able to define what exactly they want because it would seem as if with some states they have resolved for the direct primaries, while with some others they have resolved to go with the indirect primaries. But still with the PDP, and after that movement, call it, the campees or people who crossed the carpet, when they moved towards the PDP, we saw a lot of people, indicating the interest for the #1 seat from the party. Time was when everyone thought the PDP didn't have more than just one or two persons. What does this mean for the PDP now that we have Governor Tambuwal, we have David Saraki, David Mack, we have a lot of people, Sule Lamido, so many people now back in the PDP. What's the reading you get when you look at what's happening in the PDP?
Like I said earlier, the PDP needs to manage itself properly. Having these big weights as presidential candidates, shows that the party is still vibrant. People see an opportunity to use the party to excel politically. With the likes of the names you just mentioned, Tambuwal, Bukola Saraki, Atiku Abubakar, Governor Dankwambo, Sule Lamido, Kwakwanso, I think there are about 12 or 13 presidential candidates, or rather aspirants. You can tell that the party itself is actually feeling the pressure because in the news 2 days ago, we heard reports of disagreements between the BOT chairman and the NWC on the issue of River State, hosting as venue for its convention. That tells you a lot in politics. It means that a lot of things we've been hearing is actually coming to fore, that a governor like Wike would rather prefer a Tambuwal as candidate, and a man like the BOT chairman would prefer someone like an Atiku. So the party has a lot of issues to contend with, and its survival depends on how it manages its primaries, depends on how it manages the egos of all the aspirants. Because if the process is not free and fair, like I say, if it's not free and fair, you're going to have problems. And once you have problems, you find it hard to stand a chance against a president like Muhammadu Buhari, who has come rain, come sun, very occultic followers.
Do you think with all of this that we see in the PDP, is that making the APC take for granted so many things that they should have fixed, in their own camp, looking at the number of candidates and perhaps awaiting the day that they will have their primaries? Because I think, looking at it critically, just after the primaries, we're likely to see, bickerings and complaints, going by the number of people and the caliber of persons who are going for that position.
Yes, I tend to agree with you. You know, if you follow politics, if you follow congresses and primaries, there are always disagreements. You know, there are always disagreements. That's why, you know, I always canvass for making it as free and as fair as possible, so that when people lose, they don't sulk. You know, they know that they lost fairly and squarely. The APC, from what I'm saying, will have challenges with its congresses. Yes, no doubt. Will have challenges with this Congress, with its primaries across several states. But how it manages that process will determine how it survives at the local elections. I don't think, you know, the disagreements really will endanger the party at the presidential election, because if you talk to people in the party, they will really tell you that they have no problems with the president. The president himself has opted to do direct primaries. He wants the people to vote in his election. I know it's tactical, so that if, for instance, a court says that faction A is illegal or faction B is illegal, it jeopardizes his own ticket. So the best way is to allow direct primaries for his own election. So I don't think most people that are aggrieved in the party have issues with the president. So give or take, they will back him for his election. But where the APC should actually watch out for local elections, state elections, because we have people that are angry, they work for the opposition. It's that simple. That's how it works in politics. And
you know, talking about local elections, we'll come back to some local elections on local problems, that we have seen with some of these parties, specifically the APC. I'm not done yet with the PDP. I'm also trying to look at the venue, even though Governor Wike has said he wasn't the one who chose that venue. The same people who chose the venue, according to him, went behind to also say, well, they were against the venue. So, looking at the venue and looking at what is not being said, because in politics sometimes you try to listen to what's not being said, and it gets louder sometimes. What do you think will be the fear of these people, or are the fears of these people who are already, putting a question mark on the venue of Rivers State being the place chosen by the party?
okay, I'll take you back to the last Congress that they did in Rivers State. I'm sure you followed the chaos that went before, during, and after. It was in Port Harcourt, Wike's home turf. When it's your home turf, it's easier for you to mobilize, easier for you to deploy your resources. Politics is all about money and your ability to coerce and do things on your home turf, have access to the delegates. If Rivers State if he ends up holding in Rivers, it gives Wike the advantage. Rivers State is probably one of the richest states in Nigeria in terms of monthly revenue from FAC. That's a lot of leverage to play on. You have the delegates, you know where they are, you know the nooks and crannies of your city, you know how to reach them, you know where to camp them, you have access to them, you have more men on ground to hit the road running for you. So that's what I think, is causing the resistance, especially when it's, from the open sources that we talk to you and liaise with, you find out that Wike himself, yes, will come on TV and say he has no interest in the process, but every politician has an interest in the process, and I believe that the leaders of the PDP themselves know where each and everybody stands. So that's why Wike is getting the kind of resistance that he's getting, because they saw him deploy resources during the Congress that returned Secondus as national chairman against the pushbacks from people like IBB and co, and some other politicians of note in the party. So they believe that the same scenario may likely play out because our politicians really have no shame. It's all about their survival and interests. So when the home governor rolls out his machinery, of course he will have very minimal resistance. So that's why he's having a lot of pressure from some sectors of the party wanting the convention moved out of.
So in all of this, when you talk
Port
about
Harcourt to a
resources,
neutral place.
when you talk about resources, how important is money in our politics?
You saw what happened in Oshun. You saw what happened in Ekiti. Money has always been a part and parcel of Nigerian politics. 80%, in my own opinion, of any election in Nigeria is about money. 20% of it is how you deploy it. Yes, and also depends on when you deploy it. It depends on how you mobilize your foot soldiers, how you use your resources. But if anyone tells you in Nigeria that elections are not all about money, they're not telling you the truth. Elections are all about money. If you're broke, you can't run elections. To even pick up the forms, presidential form was for the APC was
45.
Yeah, 45 million. For the governorship aspirants was 22.5 million. Where are you going to get that money from if you're not if you're not well-to-do in the society? So with the way the Nigerian political space has been set up, money plays a major role.
And just when Nigerians thought they were going to have, an alternative, looking at the young people who came up to say, yes, let's see if we can actually be part of this. Is it any, surprise for you that none of them keyed into any of these big or existing parties? None of them, the young people, when we talk about not too young to run, and they had the seal and the stamp asking them that it's okay for you to run now. We didn't see young Nigerians go into some of these political parties.
Yeah, it's sad because of this issue of godfatherism, this issue of cabals, running the parties. I don't think the two leading political parties are as open and as welcoming as other new, younger parties that are trying to grow. I'm sure there are young people out there because it's so easy for you to get into power if you ride on the back of the two big parties. And the two big parties knowing what it is and not being run by people that are young. If you look at Adams Oshiomhole should be in his 60s, and Secondos should probably be in his late 50s or 60s. And if you look at the people, if you look at the people in the national working committees of the parties as well, I don't think you have young people like that, running the parties. So it's hard for a young talk to break in, and it's also easy for them to turn their backs. So that's why young people see the new parties as an avenue, but it's hard. It's going to be hard to fight against the big monies and the big interest. These parties are I think these parties are going to die a natural death over time. Yeah.
What do you think of some of the candidates? Because if you say the parties are just going to probably die some kind of natural death, do you see some of these candidates, gravitating towards these two big or some of the existing parties? Because, for instance, SDP, as we've seen in Osun State, seem to be coming up strong.
Well, I still see SDP as a regional party. I mean, SDP is more of a southwestern party. That's the party that's been led by the former secretary to the government of the federation. I can't remember his name right. Olufalaye. That's Olufalaye's party, right? SDP does not have the kind of money. I don't think they have the kind of reach that the two leading parties have, but they can start from somewhere. But you see, my problem with the new parties, and that's why I said I think they will die a natural death over time, because their emphasis is on the presidential ticket.
No one is talking about grassroots.
No one is talking about grassroots. You need to start from the wards. Start from the wards, build the party organically from the bottoms. Fight for ward seats, fight for local government seats, fight for House of Assembly seats. That's even taking it higher. Fight for House seats, fight for Senate seats, fight for House of Rep seats. If these new parties, these young parties, do this for 4 cycles, first 4 years, next 4 years, next 4 years, in 12 years, I'm sure they would have made an impact at the local level before you start talking of presidential election. To run a presidential election in Nigeria, you probably need 5-10 billion. Where are they going to get it from? Where are they going to challenge President Buhari or Atiku Abubakar or Bukola Saraki? They don't have the money. They don't. So
when you say they don't have the money, I don't know. I come back to the fad leading up to 2019. People coming up to say they're the ones buying the forms, the expression of interest forms for an incumbent, whether you're a president, an incumbent, whether you're a governor, a senator. Everyone seems to be having a group of persons somewhere who sit and say they have contributed money for you to buy the forms. That's a new one.
it's all politics. It's all politics. It's all, these are monies going back. Don't believe the story. Some of these monies are put together by benefactors of the politician, those that have gotten contracts and what have you, those that have benefited from the system. So I want to believe that the people that bought President Buhari's forms are probably contractors or people that have benefited from the system, either directly from him or via one of his henchmen, ministers or people around him, and they put the money together and they bought the form for him. No poor person, I don't think any poor person in this country that is struggling, especially, have you ever begged anybody for money in this, between 2015 and today, and they tell you, for this Buhari government, people are hungry, people are hungry because of the times. So I don't think, people from the streets will just put their money. It's all politics. These are just their monies or monies from their cronies coming back into the system to buy the forms.
I think when we'll go on a break, when we'll come back, we'll bring this to the zone of the APC. We'll talk more on the direct and indirect primaries, because looking at what I have here, looking at how they have resolved to do this, for instance, in Abia State, it's going to be direct, Adamawa indirect, Akwa Ibom direct, Anambra direct, Kwara indirect, Lagos direct, and you ask yourself, how did they come into all of this? By the way, we're still trying to get the APC spokesperson to come talk and expatiate more on these ones, but we'll come back, we'll talk more on local politics, specifically Lagos State. Stay with us. There's a home stretch here on the Political Stew with Austyn Ogannah, the publisher of The Wheel and president Online Publishers Association of Nigeria, and we're looking at, 2019. Now, coming back, looking at some of these, we did say the APC has come up with, a document that you really can't just off the top of your head say this is the way to go. They have decided to say A will go this way and B should go this other way. So the talk of direct and indirect primaries, specifically some states like Ogun State is direct primaries, Lagos State is direct primaries, some other states having indirect primaries, and even Delta State, I think Delta should be indirect primaries.
As well, yeah.
So one wonders if you have some states that you have a lot of bickerings, infighting, and you say they should go for indirect primaries, and some to go for direct primaries. Do you, as a journalist, smell a rat?
Yes, I do. It's I think like I said earlier, I think Adams Oshomole has not managed the ruling party properly. From since he came into the party, yes, he's done some things. He's tried to put the party straight, but on the issue of the congresses of primaries, and he's been neither here nor there. If you follow the news, one day he wakes up, he says it's direct primaries nationwide. The next day he changes his position. Oh, we'll do direct primaries in some areas and we'll do indirect in some areas. And it's been changing and changing and changing. And until some days ago, I was talking to a fellow journalist and we're talking about the whole thing. And the conversation was about APC not having a clear model to conduct primaries with just a few days to the exercise until today, when the party released a statement telling us where it has chosen to do direct and indirect primaries. And I went through the list and I said to myself, looks like the party is setting itself up for chaos. Because in a state, my state, in a state like Delta, for instance, where there are two factions of the APC, I would prefer a direct primary model to protect the candidates.
Show your might, show your popularity.
Yeah, to protect the aspirants and to also protect the eventual candidate. Because if you have a state where you have parallel state leadership and a court rules, for instance, against a faction that you used its delegates as for your Congress, that automatically invalidates that process. So the candidate, whether he wins or not, if he wins an election, in the eyes of the law, he doesn't exist. So APC loses that seat. I think it happened to them in Kano with CPC, when CPC did that. Yeah. So I think the same, so I would have preferred a model where in states where you have chaos, like Rivers, like Delta, where you have parallels, where you have disagreements, direct primaries. Let the gladiators go and let the people choose. Let the party people choose. Because when you do indirect, you're just putting your hands, your life in the lives of a few delegates, 3,000, 4,000, and that's where you need to spend all that money. That's where the money in politics comes in. That's where they spend all that money for primaries. But if you do a direct model, just like a general election, people come, party members come and they vote and they choose who they want. So it depends on how they manage the process. Whether I see a lot of chaos, I see a lot of anger, I see a lot of people being shut out, and that's why I said it will be difficult for young people to break into these parties. Because if you have a young man that has put himself up, struggled to buy a form, and you're putting his fate in the hands of delegates that you have chosen to arrive at a conclusion, those guys don't stand a chance, because the delegate election is always teleguided to deliver, to elect a particular person or a particular
and 9 out of 10, and it seems that almost every delegate is being given money.
Yeah. So that's what really happens when you have a delegate system. So in those states where if you look at the list, I'm an experienced analyst. In those states where the party has chosen indirect primaries, they have agreed to teleguide the process to make sure that certain people, certain preferred people emerge. And in those areas where they've chosen direct primaries, the leadership of the party has left the people of the party to choose whoever it is they want. So I really don't know the parameter, but in my own analysis, I think that's what the party has done.
When you talked about Rivers, you said it's a state like Rivers, and you named another state. I was hoping that you were also going to mention Lagos State. Now, let's talk about Lagos State. If you look at that list, Lagos falls on the state that the party has asked that they go into direct primaries.
If you look at how, yes, I followed Lagos, I followed the meeting of the leaders of the party where they opted for direct primaries. Lagos itself, has its own problems, but I don't think Lagos is really factionalized like that, because you just don't wake up and say, "Oh, this is factionalizing the party." So I think that's what has happened in Lagos. The other faction is not, is just there. I don't think they've been aggressive with their own APC. But at the same time, choosing direct primary saves Lagos the trouble. I think Lagos APC is probably one of the most united APCs amongst the other states. So if they want to go the direct primary model, I think it works for them. But at the same time, I just hope that the party is able to manage the outcome, because you have Ambode and two others, Sanwo-Olu and I think Hamzat. Yeah, that are the three main gladiators. And from what we've read and what we've heard from the grapevine, it looks like Ambode has his hands pretty full. So the party just needs to manage the process.
Because definitely, when you say the party needs to manage the process, there's no doubt that after that primaries, by the way, the primaries will hold a weekend, there's likely to be people who will still be aggrieved, and that is where you say the party needs to show some bite to be able to manage this. It comes back again to the national level, where you said Adams Oshiomhole has been able to manage the party to some extent, but on the aspect of the primaries, he's not been able to do that pretty well. So the outcome definitely will be something that may be all in their face at the end of the day. Does this that is to come has any effect in what we saw in the last election in Osun State?
If you look at what happened in Osun State, that was where we first heard about direct primaries. Osun was like the test model for the leadership of the party to elect a candidate. And we saw how it turned out. Some of the, I didn't think it was a free and fair process. Probably because it was the first. I think they could have managed it better. But the aftermath of it, they didn't manage well, because I think his name is Adioti, I think he's the ADC candidate that took one local government that APC should actually have won, and won well. So like I said, it still boils down to how they manage the process. We saw the result, we saw how the election turned out, that it didn't really turn out well for the APC. And not just because of how they managed their primary, but because the governor himself did not do very well. Like I heard, he owed 34 months in salaries, and meanwhile he was awarding contracts to politicians, and this whole process, all culminated in the dismal, like I said earlier.
Perhaps. I think now you're talking about salaries. How powerful is the civil service? Because, in all honesty, they say seeing is believing. If you go to Osun State, they have some of the best schools in terms of buildings and structures. I think never seen before kinds of buildings and structures put in place. So the aspect of salaries, which is very key here, which you pointed to, will mean that the civil service, didn't actually key into all of that.
I'll tell you, in a state like Lagos, for instance, Lagos is a very cosmopolitan state. You have the public sector and the private sector. They both work hand in hand to drive the state. So if you all workers' salaries in Lagos, really not a big deal. Not it's a big deal, but not as big as a deal like owing workers in Osun, that is purely a civil service state. The economy is driven by government. If you owe in Bayelsa or you owe in Ekiti, so what happened to Ayo Fayose? Ayo Fayose could not even deliver his candidate purely because of the way he treated workers. So paying salaries is key, because these are the same people that will come out and vote for you. And you know how the Nigerian system works. A man earns a salary, he gives some to his wife, to his mother, to his cousins. One person earns
So the man
money.
who works is more or less like the Social Security
the
to
Social Security.
a whole lot of people.
Yeah, so if you don't pay that guy, he's unable to distribute resources down, and he's going to blame the government. And you want that guy and his family to vote the same government tomorrow. So that's what we saw in Ekiti, and that's what we also saw in Osun. You can get away with it in big states that are not, dependent on government patronage, to drive the economy. But if you do it in small states where 80–90% of the workforce are employed by government, you'll be in trouble. So for me, Governor Argbeshola did a lot of work in terms of infrastructure, but he made a very big mistake by not carrying the workforce along. You must balance it, because if a man works for you, you must pay at the end of the month. So the workforce is really very important. Civil servants, public servants, these are the people that go out there to vote, as long as market women.
This is, the last week of September, and some would think that maybe the movement is over. Do you think that as we move towards 2019, we're still likely to see people move from one party to the other?
There's a possibility that after the primaries
Of both parties?
Yes, of both parties, you see realliances, you see anger, you see another form of defection. You have people that will stay in the party and work against the party during elections. Yes,
They stay back to work against the party?
Yes, you will see it in both parties, in the PDP and the APC. If you look at how elections have been won and lost in Nigeria, if you follow the history of each cycle, you see this problem. People forming alliances for one reason or the other because they feel that they've been shortchanged.
Did that happen during President Jonathan?
Yes, I'm sure you heard the cry that some people in PDP worked for President Buhari. He worked for APC. There were people in PDP that did not defect, but stayed back in the PDP to do damage to President Jonathan. There are people like that. We heard stories. I don't want to mention names, but we heard stories that have been corroborated. So the same thing, it happens in politics every day. You can't really please everybody, but that's why I said it depends on how you manage the process. Because there will be people that will stay back in the party. Some will defect, some will stay, wait to do the damage, finish the damage, and crossover.
Some have come up to say President Buhari is one lucky president because as we move towards 2019, Nigerians are yet to see a very formidable, force kicking against his presidency. Do you share in that?
Yes, I do, but I think once the main opposition party, because I don't think any other political party in Nigeria has the capacity to challenge either the APC or the PDP. I don't think so.
So it's still about the APC
so it's
and
still,
PDP?
It's still about the APC and the PDP. So it depends on who the PDP projects. If PDP projects an Atiku Abubakar, you have an interesting race. Bukola Saraki, you have an interesting race. Rabiu Kwakwanso, you have an interesting race. Tambuwal, an interesting race. So it depends on who they put up. And it also depends on how they manage the process. Because at the end of the day, it still depends on how you manage the process. If you project a candidate that is strong, that has a strong appeal nationwide, I think you stand a chance against.
You know, I had a conversation on the program, sorry to cut you, on Political Stew with Honorable Farouk Aliyu Adamu, who said President Buhari is a movement. And I said to him, I said, Konkunso is also a movement, and which he also agreed. But now you mentioned Konkunso as another aspirant in the PDP. How formidable would a Konkunso be against President Buhari, knowing full well that these two individuals, especially in northern Nigeria, have become some sort of movement to their people?
Yeah, I mean, if PDP, for instance, I'll paint a scenario. They're both from the same Northwest. If PDP projects, if Kwakwanso emerges the PDP candidate, for instance, you have a very tough election in the Northwest, which is their own senatorial zone, which is their own region. But now, it's now going to come down to who's able to have a better spread. I don't know if Kwakwanso has the regional reach, but they say in elections it depends on the people you're able to bring, because no one man wins an election. It's a collection of people. So it depends on who. That's why I say it depends on how they manage the process. So if they manage a process, let's assume that they manage a process where Kwakwanso emerges and there's no problem in the PDP. So you have each person. Bukola Saraki is strong in Kwara. David Mark is strong in the part of Benue. Mwike is strong in Rivers. And like that, you bring the chips together, and if they fall in for him, we have an election on our hands. But if that doesn't happen, Kwakwanso doesn't stand a chance against Buhari. So,
let me see if I can pull you home before we leave. Yeah. Let's talk about your home state, Delta State. Yeah. The former governor, Dr. Udwaha, is now in the APC. And James Manager still going, again, he's still interested in going back to the Senate, representing the PDP. And Governor Konwa definitely is, getting stronger and stronger by the day within the party. How do you see, the elections for the senatorial seat
in Delta?
In Delta State.
Before let me just go back a bit. You see, in Delta South, you have 4 major ethnic groups. You have the Isokos, the Jaws, the Chekiris, and the Robos. But in the Delta Central, you have more of Robos. So you're talking of, sharing, each ethnic group taking turns based on the power sharing arrangement that they have in the state. You take out the Robos because they already have representation in the center. So you have these three groups in this senatorial district. Now, in 1999 when it started, it was an Isoko. They have an understanding that power must go.
So it moves.
It moves. I think Senator Stella Omo was the first that represented the zone. She did 1 term, 1999 to 2003, and Manager became senator. So he's been in the Senate since 2003. And when Manager was doing his 2nd term as a senator, Governor Udwaha was just elected governor. Understanding the power, how they structure power in Delta, I think there was an understanding that it would be wrong for the Chekiris to have a governor and also
and a
have the
senator.
senator representing that area. So they let it go. Manager did another turn. The understanding was that manager will allow somebody from the south, from Isoko, to at least interchange while Oduah was still governor, because based on the balance of power in the state, there was no way a senator and a governor can come, the PDP arrangement, which I really didn't care about. Now, when Oduah was finishing his tenure, wanted to run, but Jonathan told him not to, because the idea then, according to them, if you talk to the insiders, they said Jonathan had a plan for manager to become majority leader in the Senate if the PDP becomes a majority, but that didn't happen. So Oduah lost out at that time. So technically, manager has been in the Senate he's done 4 or 5 times already. Yeah. And now Oduah wants to run, and the party for some reason is not allowing him as a former governor, giving him the privilege, which naturally would mean manager stepping down.
Well, I think that's a fine place for us to wrap this up. Let's see how it pans out in 2019. Many thanks, Austyn Ogannah, for spending time with us on Political Stew.
Thank you for having me, Sulai. Thank you.
We'll take a moment and we'll come back at overtime for our snack.
There comes a time we all leave home in search of so-called green pastures. This was the case of Inyobong, who had left home for very long. For all the hustle, nothing much, until one day he met Nikki, a young rich girl who's so pretty. She said, Ini, come with me, I just like you, forget money, whatever you want, just tell me. To her surprise, Ini said, I want to go home, I'm from Akwa Ibom, in case you don't know. Akwa Ibom, we can enter moto or fly for Aero and land for Uyo. You should come with me. I'm missing the love at home. 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 Home sweet home, no place like home. I'm a king at home, so baby feel at home. You're in Akwa Ibom and it's sweet like a honeycomb. You go chop and go carry go, cause they call it the promised land. I'm so proud of my motherland. Don't call me what you want. Yeah, me, this is the home of soups. You want a family, can you come? You love.
Now, cases of forgery are becoming rampant by the day, both in the public and private sector. Now, this is a form of corruption that has a serious multiplier effect on almost every other endeavor. A forged or doctored document can lead to a decision that may do irreparable damage to the system. It is much more worrisome when an ugly trend as this creeps into an arm of government that everyone looks up to for justice. The legal profession is replete with so many maxims that underscore its importance in the life of a nation. You find maxims such as "He who comes to equity must come with clean hands," "Justice delayed is justice denied," "The judiciary is the last hope of the common man," "The law is a respecter of nobody," to mention but a few. Now, it therefore means that anybody who chooses to pursue a career in the legal profession must be honorable, honest, with integrity. It is very worrisome when rumors started flying around about how lawyers engage in all kinds of illegalities in order to subvert justice. It is bad enough that there are alleged cases of bribery in the judiciary, mostly coming from the outside. It is even worse when the #1 judicial officer speaks out of frustration about certain infractions perpetrated by senior lawyers who seek to be elevated to the prestigious rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Now, in his remarks at the opening of the 2018-29 legal year in Abuja on Monday, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Austyn Ogannah, revealed that some lawyers, in their attempt to get elevated to the prestigious rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria, engaged in the forgery of some court judgments to qualify for the rank. Although the names of the offending lawyers were not disclosed, the CJN remarked that they had been reported to the police and were currently under investigation for possible prosecution. Now, the judiciary must be protected from corruption, and anyone found to be corrupting the system must be punished appropriately. That's my piece of snack. Many thanks for watching.